The concealed chamber did not look like a treasure vault. That was the first point in its favor. Treasure vaults were built for owners. They displayed wealth even when hidden, because the people who built them wanted the act of concealment to feel important. They loved polished stone, carved guardians, sealed shelves, spirit lamps that refused to die, and inscriptions praising the wisdom of men who feared thieves more than decay. This chamber was a grave that had learned to think. The ceiling was low and uneven. The walls were covered with petrified roots as thick as arms, all twisting toward the center. The floor was black soil packed hard as stone. No lamps burned, yet the chamber held a faint green light that came from the roots themselves, pulsing slowly like breath beneath bark. In the center stood a dead tree stump, waist-high, split down the middle. The split was dark. Not shadow dark. Deep or. It looked as if the stump had been cut open and found to contain night. Around the stump were 9 stone basins. 8 were cracked. 1 remained whole. Lin Fan stood just inside the door and did not move farther. The air here was heavier than in the passage. Every breath carried decay chi refined by time until it had become almost medicinal. Almost. For an ordinary damaged root disciple, inhaling too deeply would feel like relief. The decay would soften root scars, numb pain, and make stagnant chi circulate. Then it would continue softening until the root structure lost shape and the disciple became fertilizer for the chamber. Kind methods announced their price. Cruel methods made the first taste pleasant. The withering root inheritance belonged to the second kind. Lin Fan breathed shallowly and examined the chamber. The 8 cracked basins held residue. Bone ash. Root fragments. Dried blood. Failed entrance. The whole basin contained clear water. Too clear. No underground chamber sealed for ages should hold clear water unless the water was being renewed, purified, or guarded. The basin's surface reflected nothing. Not Lin Fan, not the green light, not the roots above it. A test, perhaps. Or a medium for the technique. He approached the dead stump first, not the water. At the base of the stump, old characters had been carved in a spiral. The script was older than Azure Cloud Sect and rougher than the polished ancient languages used by famous inheritances. This had been a side lineage, perhaps even a rejected branch of a greater sect. Its founder had not written for scholars. He had written for people desperate enough to crawl through poison and roots. Lin Fan read the spiral slowly. Those born under full branches are fed by heaven. Those born under broken branches are fed to men. Those who refuse both must learn to eat the rot. Below the words, 3 lines had been cut deeper. Do not worship the root. Do not trust the wound. Do not let hunger choose. Lin Fan's eyes lingered on the 3rd line. Do not let hunger choose. Better than expected. Many forbidden methods failed because they glorified appetite. Devour this, consume that, turn resentment into flame, turn blood into power. Such methods produced rapid strength and stupid deaths. A method that warned against hunger might have been created by someone who survived long enough to understand its own teeth. He circled the stump. On the far side, the spiral continued in smaller characters. The root burial method is not given. It is excavated. Offer your false root. Bury your accepted weakness. Return with 1 seed. Lin Fan crouched before the split in the stump. Inside the dark gap, something lay hidden. Not a manual. Not a jade slip. The chamber was too old and too hostile for delicate records. Inheritances meant for the desperate needed forms that survived neglect, moisture, and unworthy hands. He reached toward the split, then stopped. The air around the stump was still. Too still. The chamber had opened for him, but opening was not acceptance. It had tested control at the door. The center likely tested willingness to sacrifice what one believed one's root to be. Offer your false root. He looked inward. His surface spirit root remained low-grade wood, warped by poison and marked by forced opening. That was the root the spirit root pillar had read. It was not false in the sense of unreal. It was false in the sense of incomplete. The poison ring and green-black thread beneath it were closer to his true future material. The chamber would likely ask him to surrender the surface definition. Dangerous. If done improperly, he could cripple the root before reforging began. If refused, the chamber might deny the inheritance. If accepted too fully, the withering root hunger might rewrite the root according to its own method before he understood the price. Lin Fan did not like accepting methods before reading them. He turned to the whole basin. The water still reflected nothing. A mechanism. Perhaps the basin showed the false root that had to be offered. He approached and looked down. At first, the water remained clear and empty. Then the surface darkened. An image appeared. A 16-year-old boy stood in the spirit root test square, hand on the pillar, weak green light trembling below the second vein. Laughter circled him. Zhang Hu's hand descended toward the back of his head. Elder Gu's gaze moved away. The first life. Not memory exactly. The basin showed the accepted weakness. The boy in the water lowered his head. He did not resist the slap. Lin Fan watched without expression. The image changed. The boy sat alone in a damp room, clutching a bruised arm, whispering that he would prove them wrong. The words carried pain, shame, and a desperate need for recognition. That need had driven him for years. It had also wasted years. The basin waited for reaction. Lin Fan gave it none. The image changed again. The boy, older now, kneeling in mud after a failed breakthrough, crying blood because the contaminated root could not carry the method he had stolen. He cursed heaven, sect, Zhang Hu, Elder Gu, fate, his own body. Everything except the assumption that the root's first definition was the battlefield he had to win on. The chamber's green light pulsed. Offer your false root. It wanted him to reject that self. No. Too simple. Rejection was only another form of attachment. Men who screamed that they had abandoned weakness often spent their lives proving weakness still ruled them. Lin Fan had seen countless cultivators build entire demonic paths from humiliation they claimed to have transcended. He placed 2 fingers into the basin. The water was warm. It tried to pull his awareness into the image. Lin Fan let it touch only the outer layer. You are not false because you were weak, he said to the reflection. The boy in the water looked up. You are false because you believed their measurement was the whole shape. The water trembled. Lin Fan continued, I do not offer you a shame. I offer the conclusion you accepted. He pressed his fingers deeper. The image broke apart. Green light rose from the basin, wrapping around his hand. It tried to climb the arm. He guided it inward to the root junction, not letting it pass through the meridian scars. The poison ring stirred. The green-black thread opened a sliver. The surface root appeared in his inner sight, weak wood, dull, warped. Lin Fan did not cut it off. He peeled away the label attached to it. Low grade. Waste. Destined. The concepts clung harder than poison. They had been placed not only by the spirit root pillar, but by years of belief from the first life. Even with rebirth, memory carried grooves. He had rewritten action faster than flesh. The chamber found the slower remnants. He burned them. Not with chi. With decision. The basin water turned black. The 8 cracked basins around the stump began to shake. Ash rose from them in thin streams. The dead stump split widened by a fraction. Something inside it exhaled. The chamber accepted the offering. Not the root. The false conclusion. Lin Fan withdrew his hand from the basin. The water was no longer clear. It held a single dark seed floating on the surface. The seed was smaller than a grain of rice and shaped like a curled root tip. He did not take it yet. Ancient inheritances loved second tests disguised as rewards. He examined the 8 cracked basins. The ash streams flowed toward the dead stump, not the seed. Each cracked basin represented someone who had failed this step. Perhaps they offered too much. Perhaps they tried to devour the seed immediately. Perhaps they mistook rejecting their past for controlling it. The ash entered the stump. The split widened again. From within came a sound like pages turning, though no paper existed. The technique was not in the seed. The seed was permission. The method remained inside the stump. Lin Fan lifted the dark seed from the water with the basin shard rather than his fingers. It trembled on the shard's edge. The green-black thread in his root responded, eager. Wait. The thread obeyed. He carried the seed to the stump and placed it at the edge of the split. The seed rolled inward. The chamber went still. All 9 root patterns on the walls lit at once. The dead stump opened. Inside was no jade slip, no scroll, no book. Only a hollow filled with interwoven black roots, each root carved with microscopic characters that moved like veins. They shifted, rearranged, and formed lines across the inner wood. Lin Fan leaned closer. The first complete name revealed itself. 9 burials withering root art. Early stage foundation method. Forbidden classification. Compatible with damaged, poisoned, split, or rejected roots. Price: cultivate hunger without obeying hunger. Failure: root collapse, vitality devouring, personality distortion, death by internal withering. Lin Fan's eyes sharpened. This was better than the burned rubbing had suggested. Not merely a repair technique. A foundation rewriting art. It could use poison residue, decay chi, failed classifications, and hostile spiritual contamination as materials to build a root that grew by burying what would normally cripple it. It was not a righteous method. It was not demonic in the crude sense either. It was a graveyard method. Plant weakness. Bury it. Feed on the rot. Return with a root that remembered death and refused it. The chamber's roots pulsed. The technique began to enter his mind. Lin Fan did not accept it passively. He read the first line and stopped the rest. Slowly. No inheritance entered him without being inspected. The chamber resisted. The roots on the wall tightened. The dead stump's hollow darkened. Lin Fan looked at the shifting characters and spoke softly. If you wanted a disciple who swallows whole, you should not have opened for a damaged root. The chamber stilled. Then the first line separated from the rest and hung before him in dark green light. Good. It could negotiate through structure. Lin Fan smiled faintly. Now the true mechanism began. The chamber did not like being negotiated with. That was also useful. Dislike meant preference. Preference meant pressure could be applied. A completely indifferent inheritance would be harder to move. This one wanted continuation. It wanted its method cultivated, its remaining root preserved, its old hunger carried out of the sealed grave. That want made it possible to bargain without words. Lin Fan watched the first line hover and refused to read further until the other characters withdrew completely. They did, slowly. Like roots unclenching. Only then did he allow the first line to enter memory. It did not simply become words. It pressed into his root junction and compared itself with the damaged structure there. The art recognized poison residue. It recognized the forced split made during the spirit root test. It recognized the public judgment clinging to the outer layer of his root like old mud. Each recognition came with a small tug, as if the method wanted to begin sorting his foundation immediately. Lin Fan stopped it. The line froze half-absorbed. Sequence first, he said. The chamber's green light dimmed. Complete sequence. Then material. Then cultivation. No answer. He lifted the basin shard toward the remaining half-root inside the stump. The roots on the walls tightened. There. Leverage confirmed. He lowered the shard. Sequence first. The dark green line pulsed once, resentful but obedient. More characters separated from the mass, arranging themselves not as scripture but as steps. The art was old, hungry, and proud, but it could be made orderly if the remaining root was threatened. Lin Fan read with absolute attention. Missing one condition in a forbidden method did not create a minor flaw. It created a corpse with a surprised expression. The sequence continued to separate. It did not form neat chapters. It formed rings. Each ring represented a burial, and each burial represented a relationship between root and pressure. The first ring was small and dark, wrapped in the words assigned weakness. The second was larger, marked by poison accepted. The third carried injury remembered. The fourth, public name. The fifth, hostile chi. The sixth, root death. The seventh and eighth were blurred, too deep for his current vessel to hold safely. The ninth ring did not show words. It showed a hollow. Lin Fan looked away from it before the art could unfold more. Not now. The chamber tried to keep his attention there. The hollow pulled with the kind of promise forbidden arts loved most, completion. See the end, understand the path, accept the whole inheritance. Many cultivators would have reached for it. Especially those who had lived weak lives and suddenly smelled a method that could make every wound meaningful. Lin Fan had already reached the end of one life. He had seen what completion without vigilance cost. First burial only, he said. The ninth hollow dimmed. The first ring brightened. Good. The chamber could be forced to narrow its gift. That meant the inheritance had rules binding its hunger. Not ethics. Structure. Structure was better. Ethics bent when desire changed. Structure broke or held. He copied the first ring into memory, not as reverence but as a tool schematic. Required entry state, circulation direction, containment points, failure symptoms, emergency closure, post-burial stabilization. Some details were missing by design, left for the cultivator to discover through pain. Old inheritances called that tempering. Lin Fan called it negligence with tradition. He would fill the gaps himself. The first gap appeared immediately. The art described how to form a burial ring, but not how to stop the ring from accepting future pressure automatically. That omission was not accidental. A cultivator who followed the art faithfully would form a ring that continued gathering every compatible wound, insult, poison, and failure until the root grew faster than judgment could restrain. Such growth would feel miraculous. Then hunger would begin choosing situations. The method did not lie about the danger, but it did not make safety convenient. Lin Fan would have to add a lock. Not now. The current body lacked the chi control for a complete lock. But he could prepare a temporary command mark based on the one he carved during the spirit root test: remain open, do not heal crooked, await material. That command would become the outer rule of the first burial. The art could provide structure. His will would provide jurisdiction. That was the only acceptable division.